Things were a lot simpler a long time ago because there weren't a lot of different choices for fishing line. Now we've got a lot of different fishing lines on the market, a lot of good quality lines, different types of lines, and that again makes things complicated. So let me tell you a little bit about the different types of fishing line and give you a little bit of an idea what's different between those types of line. And again, then it becomes a matter of choosing the right tool for the job. The different types of lines may work a little bit better in different fishing situations. Now, the most common type of fishing line, the one that's been around forever, would be the old monofilament lines. This is an example of Suffix here, or Strand, Trilene's, another very popular kind of monofilament fishing line. Most of these lines are relatively clear, although they do make some with color added to them so that you can see your line better. You can watch your line then and tell where it's at or when you might have a bite. Of course, the monofilament lines come in a variety of weights or pound test. And the pound test is just basically the breaking strength of that line. So an 8-pound test line at approximately 8 pounds of pressure, that line will break. I believe the monofilaments are still a very good choice for all-around fishing. I use monofilaments for most of the fishing I do. They're just a good all-around line. The thing to keep in mind about the monofilament lines is they do stretch. This isn't like a piece of wire. There is quite a bit of stretch, like a rubber band in a monofilament line. And as we talk about some of the other different line types, that's one thing that's different about the monofilaments, is they have quite a bit of stretch. Now, of course, on the market in recent years, it's been several years now, or what I call some of the super lines. And these are lines, things like the Suffix 832, the Spider Wire, the Fireline, Power Pro. These are lines that are actually made out of the same material that they make bulletproof vests out of. They've just taken that same material and spun it into a line. And then in some case, they've spun it into braids. So that's where you have the braided super lines, like this Suffix 832 is a braided super line. And that line is a little bit more visible, more opaque, if you will. It's extremely thin for its strength, though. So with these super lines, like the Fireline or Spider Wire, you can use a line that's very thin and still have a very strong line. A lot thinner than a comparable monofilament line. Something to keep in mind about these super lines is that there's very little stretch with these lines. They aren't wire, but they don't stretch much more than wire. So that gives you a lot of sensitivity when you're using these lines. Because there's no stretch, you can feel what's going on as you're reeling a bait or lure along the bottom, or you can feel when a fish takes that bait. You also need to keep that in mind when you're playing fish, because with no stretch, if you get a little too aggressive, or what we call horse the fish, with these lines, that you can jerk those hooks right out of their mouth. So if you're using these lines like the Spider Wire, the Fireline, the Suffix 832, then you may need to use a rod with a little more flex in it so that that'll compensate for the no stretch of the line. Again, with the no stretch, there's some situations those lines are really good in. If you're fishing really deep water, it gives you extra feel. Since they're so thin for their strength, the super lines are really good for getting baits and lures down deep, or you can use a very thin line and still have a very strong line to handle the fish you might catch. Now, the last type of line that I want to talk about are the fluorocarbon lines. And again, fluorocarbon is another material, another synthetic, almost plastic material. What is different about the fluorocarbon lines is fluorocarbon has a refractive index almost the same as water. So light passes through the fluorocarbon line the same way as it passes through water. And then, as you can imagine, the fluorocarbon lines are the least visible of the lines that we have to use today for fishing. So the fluorocarbons are really good in clear water situations where you may need to use that very invisible line to keep from spooking fish. I'll use fluorocarbons, for example, as a leader in some cases where I need a clear line so I don't spook fish. The fluorocarbons have very little stretch. They stretch more than the spider wire or fire line, the super lines, but they stretch less than the monofilaments. The fluorocarbons are also very abrasion resistant. And again, that's a good quality if you're fishing in a situation where you may be around sticks or rocks or things that can nick your line and weaken the line. The fluorocarbons are good for that. Or you can use the fluorocarbons as leader material if you're doing some fishing for pike or muskies, fish that might cut your line. So those are the different basic line types that are available. Again, different tools for different jobs. The lines have some different characteristics, and if you know those characteristics, you can tailor your presentation, your line, to the situation that you have. But most of the time, the monofilament's good for all-around use. The super lines, the braided super lines, are good if you need a thin diameter line or a line with little or no stretch. And then the fluorocarbon lines are very good if you need a line that's nearly invisible.